In this episode of Stir, we're looking at dumplings from all over the world. We're looking at comfort foods and traditions that run through families for generations. Every single culture has a dumpling, and so what better vehicle to understand different cultures than to look at perhaps the world's perfect food. Little pockets, either stuffed or boiled. They can be sweet, they can be savory, they can really be anything. In fact, one of our big questions for this series is, what is a dumpling anyway?
I have no idea what a dumpling is.
Oh God. A beautiful soft roll of delicious yumminess. I really couldn't tell you like any real
Meat stuffed with dough. I don't know.
I've had like soft dumplings before. It comes with like pork in the center and some kind of like rice binding. You know, super tasty stuff.
Dough stuffed with meat. That's what I meant.
Dough stuffed with meat.
Yeah.
Boiled biscuit is a dumpling. Unless it's stuffed with something that's more Asian, but it's basically the same thing still.
A dumpling is a soft, delicious meal that you can eat in broth sometimes, or over rice sometimes. That's what it is.
What makes a dumpling a dumpling?
Dumpling, they make it by the flour and then stuffing inside. You can put anything you like.
Yeah.
When I first come to this country, I eat ravioli, okay?
Yeah.
Huh? Ravioli? Look like it's our Chinese dumpling, but it's different kind of sauce.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Some of my earliest memories growing up were of me playing with dough and a rolling pin and lots of flour all over the place. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was a big part of my mom's dumpling making operation. And she continues involving the family to this day. This past Chinese New Year, she brought the dumpling making kit and set it up for my nephew and niece to participate in. And so they got the same kind of experience I did, and hopefully the same kind of memories. The big season for eating dumplings is Chinese New Year, or the Lunar New Year, which happens late January, early February. The truth is, dumplings are prepared and eaten any time you can get a lot of people in the same room. It's, in my experience, been any time that lots of family and friends are getting together and looking for something to do and eat together. The cultural significance of dumplings is that they represent the Chinese people sticking together, because dumplings stick together, but also in the communal making of the meal. So, like a big dinner, big feast for a wedding or for a celebration of some sort, you'll see everyone to just pitch in together and make the meal together and spend time talking to each other and creating things. There are, generally speaking, 4 different traditions in Chinese cooking, each separated by the different regions. The cuisine of the East, or Shanghai, usually has small, delicate dishes. Western Chinese cooking is Sichuan, and that's very hot, spicy dishes. Southern Chinese, which is where my family hails from, are mildly spicy, but lots of sweet. Northern cooking, Beijing style, has some very famous dishes like Beijing duck and the traditional Chinese dumpling is out of the northern tradition. There's a particular art to it, with the way that the skin is wrapped and how much filling you put in it, and I don't think my brother or I have really mastered that yet. So whenever we make them, my mom's a little bit gentle with our egos. There are a number of different variations on the traditional dumpling. In spring, the dumplings are filled with garlic chives. In the fall, dumplings are filled with cabbage with pork or chicken or beef. And Beijing specifically has a specialty dumpling that's filled with lamb. Dumplings are now common in all the traditions of Chinese cuisine. And in fact, there are different variations on a theme here. So we have the traditional dumplings that we're talking about, and then Southern Chinese have wontons, which use a different skin, which is very, very thin. And those are quite common. And you can have those fried or also boiled in soup. Dumplings are also cooked in different ways, and the main difference is dumplings are boiled and pot stickers are pan-fried. And they're essentially the same thing, same filling, and even the same skin. But the skin is slightly different. The skin of dumplings are prepared with cold water, and the pot sticker skins are prepared with hot water. And then obviously the difference between boiling and frying. Every year, my mom gets together with her sisters and her brothers, and they cook together and they swap stories, and dumplings are a huge part of that. I remember going back to Malaysia, where my parents are from, and visiting a couple of years ago. And of course, the celebratory dinners were participatory cooking. So there were definitely dumplings being made, wontons being made, and a whole bunch of dishes. And then, of course, we all ate together in grand style.
How do you
So, like, I don't know, I guess a little pouch of food, usually like steamed, right? Guess Asian, Chinese cuisine, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Not just meats, but a bunch of different things can be wrapped in a shell can be made of flour, and then you pinch it together and then you cook it. You can either cook it in water, and that's technically what a dumpling is, or you can fry it, and that's a pot sticker.
A dumpling's a pastry that's found in chicken and sauce, and it's made out of flour.
To me, there are two types of dumplings: the stuffed dumpling, and then just like a spätzle, which is like you can use in like chicken and dumplings. It's almost a noodle, like a gnocchi. But then there's also a stuffed kind of wonton, ravioli, pierogi, empanada, right? A pierogi is a stuffed dumpling. It's a Polish ravioli of sorts. According to food history, Ukrainian immigrants brought pierogies to North America, coming to Canada for work. And so, part of Poland and Western Ukraine, that was all the Austro-Hungarian Empire, basically, is the birth of the pierogi. So there are two parts of the pierogi, the dough and then the filling. So what you want to do is make the filling first. So you boil the potatoes, add the cheddar cheese, we caramelize some onions. This is the most traditional variety, is potato cheddar. And then we will mix the dough and then sheet it out.
And you work with your sister?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's come to rescue me from So she moved down here 3 years ago this month to come and help me be my kitchen manager, actually.
You guys work well together?
We do. Well, yes. most of the time. We used to live together and work together, but now we have our own, homes. I started making pierogies when I was young, and my grandmother, my baba, taught me how to make pierogies in her kitchen, and they've been my favorite food growing up. And it's peasant food. It's easy to make. I mean, you have flour, you have potatoes, some cheese that you make yourself, because originally it was farmer's cheese, like potato and cheddar is the Americanized pierogi, but it was a ricotta cheese that you could just strain off the curds and hang for a little bit and then add to the potatoes. So everything was made off the land. What we use today is my baba's recipe, and basically we haven't changed much at all, except for we do kind of more exotic
varieties now than just potatoes and cheese. So there are like the pierogi ruski, which people think is a Russian pierogi, is actually not. It's from this certain area in the Carpathian Mountains in western Ukraine where you use potatoes and farmer's cheese. If you're in northern Poland, it'll be more of like a dried meat or like sauerkraut and mushroom and not potato at all. There's a lot of people that will walk by and see, oh, stuffed cabbage roll. Oh, you know, there's they say kapusta a lot because that's cabbage in Polish. So we do like a cabbage and noodles dish, which is very delicious and also very pedestrian. I mean, all of this food really is peasant food, but it is comfort food and reminds you of growing up. I mean, pierogi eaters, it sounds so bland, but really it's just, you want that taste of home, taste of the old country, basically. Everything, even at my store at Findlay Market, is all the stuff we eat on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is the biggest day for pierogi eating. They're vegetarian, so on Christmas Eve there are 12 dishes that you eat and they're all vegetarian. But the second would be during Lent. So the churches in Northeast Ohio have pierogi like orders, basically. It's like a fish fry here, but you go and you pick up pierogies and you eat them at home with fish or whatever. And so when you go to the church, you pick up the however many dozen and they come in these clear plastic bags, and then like when on your way home you just like stick your hand in and eat a couple on the way, and you know, hopefully there's still some for the family when you get back. You know, I started this as a hobby. I would never thought that it would become what I do every day, but yeah, it's great. I wasn't able to find the authentic pierogi here in Cincinnati, so that's why I started making them. And, you know, and it makes me feel really good when someone says, oh, this tastes just like my grandmother's does. Oh, this tastes like a church pierogi, you know? Like when I make cabbage rolls, to me that smells like Christmas Eve, you know? Every time, it takes you right back. So this is a way for me to keep what I remember of growing up in this culture alive. So I have a niece, you know, and I want her, she loves to eat pierogies and she loves to come and help us. So at least that will live on with her. It definitely does take a village to make all of these pierogies. So, you know, and what I love about this too is it kind of is a labor of love, and one that I think is a dying art. And what I love is now having interaction with customers is like they have their stories of the whole family makes them on Christmas Eve, and there's like 20 of us and we make a couple hundred of them, and then they all sit and eat like all of, you know, the work. And it's been a lot of fun making them, even with the classes that we do have here, you know. So we're all like making pierogies together, and then it's nice to make food together and then share it and eat it around a big table. Right?
What do you think a dumpling is?
A dumpling is, I guess, like chicken and dumplings. That's all I could think of.
If you're from Cincinnati, to me, a dumpling is like a little floury ball that goes in chicken soup.
Pocket filled with savory goodness.
I would second that. You know, pinched together pocket.
I can't remember. This is, I think, just flour and suet. Just flour and suet.
Okay.
That's a classic English dumpling.
A dumpling is that thing that you add to whatever broth you have in your house that is just fulfilling. It doesn't matter what it is. It needs to be some kind of dough consistency, but it is that thing that brings you that fullness. So not everybody likes just liquid. So you have a little dumpling, so you have a little broth, so you have this fully rounded out dish.
Yeah.
You don't have to have meat, you don't have to have veg, you don't have to have anything, just that.
Right. Fullness, I like that. It brings fullness.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty common across, you know, all the dumplings that we're doing. They're usually comforting and you leave sort of like full. Yeah.
My kitchen is my safe haven. That's first and foremost. I'm a police dispatcher for the city of Cincinnati, and it's a little stressful, as you can imagine. There are good days, and then there are the rest. On the rest, I come home and I find peace here. It is cathartic for me, and I like being able to play with food and turn food that should look like one thing into something else. for me, being able to find out how to do things, it's sort of like my own how it's made or how things work. I don't get science except for in the kitchen, and I get science completely in the kitchen. I'm not into molecular gastronomy, although it is really cool. There are some things it would just probably not be safe for me to be playing with. I do run my appliances out, we all know that, and I do have accidents like everyone else does in their kitchen, so I'm not perfect. I've had food color splattered everywhere and looked like I got stabbed one day. The UPS man was a little concerned when I had what looked like blood dripping down the front of me.
Oh, no.
But things happen, and you go on, and I'm not always content with how things look, but they still taste great, so you try again the next time. Especially when it comes to food, you have to try it twice. The first time to see if you like it, the second time to make sure that you don't, because everybody cooks different. They look at food different, they taste different, things smell different. There's not two people in the world who taste the same flavors. But when it comes to Passover, it's a different ballgame. It is what it is. I don't feel I have a choice. It is tradition for me to have the haroset and the fruit compote and the chopped liver and the gefilte fish and the brisket and the matzo ball soup. Everything that we do is about the matzah, and so you try to find new ways to play with old habits. And it can get boring, so when you find a new trick for the matzah, it's always a good thing. There are certain foods you're required by the dietary laws of the holiday, which is 8 days. It started Monday night, and it ends the following Monday. We have the Seder we do. We follow the story of the Passover. We talk about the foods that are required eating, which includes the horseradish and the haroset, which is the apples, wine, walnuts, and cinnamon. And we eat a lot of matzah. Now, it's not law that you have brisket, but it is law that you have everything that's on the Seder plate. Everything has to be represented. And so you try to put everything that's represented on the Seder plate onto your own plate. So you have the matzah, so you have the matzah balls, and you have the lamb shank, so you might have a roast leg, or you might have, whatever, lamb chops. The egg represents life, and so the egg soup that I make for me, that people are like, that just looks weird. That's a tradition from my family in Louisville. The haroset, which is the apples in line, that represents the mortar for the bricks that were built the pyramids. The horseradish is for the bitter thyme, and so are the bitter greens. And the salt water represents the tears, and the parsley represents the life and the bittersweet moments of our past.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about the Passover Seder is the symbolism is inherent in the food. It's not like you have a food tradition. The food is the tradition.
With regard to the holiday traditions, I try to bring my family, who is no longer here, back to my table. So the chair I'm sitting in belongs to my great-grandmother. The compote, I'm sorry, I call it compost. I've called it compost since I was a little kid. The fruit compote is an ode to my dad's mother, who's passed. The gefilte fish I make from scratch, which the only people in my family who ever made it from scratch was my Aunt Gertie, which is my mother's aunt. I talk to people at Family Market. They are my family. I talk to people at Kroger's, and they too become my family in a different kind of way. And for me, it's like breathing. And as I'm doing each thing, it's about, I remember doing this when, and I remember what this tasted like when, and I remember the smells when I rendered the schmaltz, and I came in the back door and it smelled like my bubby's house, and I was just, oh. It was that instantaneous hit of that smell that just, I was in my bubby's kitchen. And I was 5. I mean, it's like that. Yeah. You're right there, and it's only for that brief second, and you really wish you could hold on to it longer, and you can't. So you put it on your table, and you hope other people get to enjoy it as much as you do.
What is a dumpling?
Well, I know what a dumpling from China is. It's a stuffed, fried dough ball, I guess.
That seems to be the going answer.
Dumpling is it's like a Asian food side.
Dumpling is an Asian snack filled with meat or vegetable. I've had Chinese dumplings. I think there are Japanese dumplings also.
Oh crap. A doughy filled
appetizer. Well, no, made out of dough, filled with meat or vegetables.
Oh my gosh. A meat stuffed pastry. Get good?
A dumpling is a stuffed shell. Tostito to be exact. Yeah, it is dough.
It's actually dough.
Ooh, it is.
You got it.
A dumpling to me in its most basic form is flour and egg. And I mean salt, but I kind of feel like salt's always just a given. But yeah, just flour and egg. Red Feather just turned 2 years old in January. And we are like we're an American cuisine restaurant, but we do have like some like international influences. I love that when you say American cuisine, it really means that you get to cook whatever you want, which is nice. But some of the things that we're known for, like our pork chop is one thing that we're definitely known for. And then the gnocchi, which we're doing today, is another thing that people come in here for. Gnocchi was here at this, was a staple on the menu before I started here. And then it was kind of one of those projects that I at first was just given to do, and then over time I just saw all the different variables that go into it that can create a different end product. For instance, the bake time on the potatoes, whether you bake them in the convection oven or the conventional oven, how many potatoes you put on a single tray or how close they are together, or whether you poke them or perforate them or don't perforate them, how quickly you get them out of the skins in order to mill them. I mean, there's just so many different variables throughout the entire process, and the more times I did it, the more I noticed, the more I cared about each step of that process. And every time I've made it, I've tried to find some way to improve some part of that process or another, whether it be something that allows for like a fluffier end result, or part of the process that allows me to be more time efficient in the process of making it, or a part of the process that allows a more consistent size. But I've just kind of like, fell in love with the minutia of it and how each little detail can alter the end result. It's gotten to the point where at first I would maybe like start it and I would roll out the dough and then I would give it to someone else to blanch off. And then I kind of noticed that like sometimes people wouldn't take the care to like use a spatula to put them into the water, and then like they would grab them with their hands and sometimes put dents in them and alter the end result. And ultimately, like it got to the point where like I would just do it from start to finish, and I didn't really want anyone else to be involved in it because I didn't want anyone else to mess it up. I'm getting ready to train someone else to do it just to kind of lighten my load because it is a very time-intensive process. And I kind of told them that the number one thing going into it was that they had to want to make gnocchi better than me in order to ever like be able to, basically. And honestly, I'm not even saying that I'm like the best gnocchi maker. I've only been making gnocchi for like a year and a half, so like I'm sure there's like little old Italian grandmas out there that have been making gnocchi all their lives that could probably teach me a thing or two. And if ever given the opportunity, I would love to learn it from like a little old Italian grandma. That would be awesome. But everywhere along the way, like every time I get an Italian cookbook, I kind of like go to the gnocchi section and just see, kind of like go through their process and see if there's anything I can take from it. Because it's not like I'm happy with our gnocchi. It's not like I want to like completely change the recipe, but like if I see a little detail with like good reasoning behind it, that's like, oh, we do this because of this, and this is how it turns out, then maybe I'll like tweak my method a little bit, and just to see how it goes, and if it produces a better result, then I usually stick with that. The reason I found cooking is because I've always had like an artistic side, and I studied fine arts for a little bit in college, and I don't know, kind of fell out of interest with that, but still kind of had this artistic drive and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Happened on that back of house position at Faux Paris, and I saw it as a really great like artistic outlet, and just something that I was, I don't know, just kind of like good at and enjoyed. So I stuck with it.
So dumplings are a labor-intensive process. You've got the rolling out of the dough, the making of the filling, you've got the stuffing and the folding. It requires a lot of work, and so it's best suited for families. It's best suited for large groups of people, aunts and uncles and grandmas coming together to sit down at a table together and cook. And so many holiday traditions, so many family traditions are built around this process. They're inherent in the process of making dumplings together. And there is magic when people get together to cook.
And obviously there's chicken and dumplings where like the ratio is a little bit more important. But again, I'm pretty sure that's just the base of like flour and egg too. So really, as long as it has flour and egg in it, it could... You boil it, I guess. That's another quality of a dumpling, I would say. Whereas like, if you just bake a flour and egg mixture, I guess it's more along in the like biscuit realm. I wonder if you could boil a biscuit. Probably not. That would be silly. But yeah, just flour, egg, boiled. So wait, so what's the difference between pasta and a dumpling? Huh.